Hello aspirants, welcome to OPSC study. So today we are here to discuss the model answer of test 1 that we have recently conducted. So let's see the question. So our first question is relationship of sociology and political science. So initially we'll frame the structure of it. So what will be your structure? You will write a intro. After that you will write the differences. Yeah, they're interlinking of both, interlinking of sociology and political science, and then you will conclude this. So this will be your structure. So first part is intro. So what you will be going to write in an intro is basically you can start with a brief history, a brief emergence of sociology, right? Emergence of sociology, you can start with that, but it need to be a brief one, okay? And then a brief history of emergence of political science, right? So over here in this you can mention industrialization, French Revolution, briefly, not too much you have to write because the question is not about the emergence, right? And then you can mention the thinkers like Auguste Comte, Herbert Spencer, Simon, है ना? And then in the case of political science you can mention thinkers like Machiavelli, Plato, Aristotle, right? So how the political science emerged and how sociology emerged, what are the main components of it, what are the main components of political science, right? So this will be a brief intro. Then you will proceed to the difference part, how basically the linkage, how they are, how these two sciences are, basically these two disciplines are totally different. So what is the difference basically? So sociology, it studies the society as a whole, that is the interrelation between the economy, political, religious structures, society, and thus a general science. But in political science, what it is, it basically focuses on only on the government and the its political behavior of the individuals. So it is more of specialized in nature, right? As we know it, and it is like it will only include the what do you say, the political parts of like executive, legislature, and judiciary kind of thing. It will only include them only. Then sociology questions the assumptions and tries to prove it. So it is more of like broad in nature, right? So it will try to assume, like make a hypothesis of anything, and then it will try to make a theory based on it. But over here, what is this? It starts with a assumption like man is a political being and studies the development of political structure. So it will only read or study the aspect of that institution in based on the political nature of our political structure of it. Then it studies all types of association. It focuses only on associations like party, pressure groups, civil societies, etc. So it is more of like open ended, right? And it is more of like closed in nature, right? So this will be your differences. Then you will proceed to the third part of the structure. What it is, you will try to make a link in between this. Now who was the major propounder of it? Was Marx, who basically bridged the gap between the sociology and political science. Marx. So what he said was basically there is one superstructure, right? And this superstructure is nothing but an economic relation of social classes present in that structure. Now this structure, what is this structure? This structure is basically a power structure. These industries, something, it is nothing but it's a power structure. Power superstructure is there, and this is the political part. And then there is a relation. This structure is basically, this institution is basically working on the relation or the economic relation of the social classes present in that institution, like bourgeoisie, proletariat, capitalist, है ना? So this relation is basically what the power constitutes. So this is how Marx tries to link it. So both the subjects are interrelated. As for example, political science provides the law, which affects the welfare of the masses. Sociology provides the data and the policies for this law, right? You can understand this, like for example, if a government wants to implement a scheme, a PDS scheme, let's suppose, right? So implementation part will be done by the political authorities, right? But who should be the beneficiaries, and how it need to be implemented? So the making and what you say, the qualitative part of this particular scheme need to be made through sociological approach. So I guess you can now make a linkage, you can understand the link between these two disciplines, right? So over here the same thing is there, because sociology basically it also considers the class concept also, right? So it will also make the voting behaviors, the decision making in an organization, casteism is all, everything will be they will try to understand that, and then based on that the government or the political authorities or political institutions will try to implement the scheme. So political system also affects social institutions, how they affect, as we cannot choose our parents, uh, will who will be, but we cannot choose the nationality where we will have, or the organization of family is also impacted by the political system, right? So these are the family is basically a social institution, but it is impacted by a political system, है ना? Family planning, है ना? That thing is there. So this is the linkage, and then you will try to conclude key, like you can conclude simply like hence political science both are important aspects of study of society, so they both need to be studied together and holistically. So this will be your first question. Let's proceed to the second part of the question. Sociology as science. So what will be your structure in this? You will write a brief history of emergence of sociology. Then you will write the definition based on the thinkers. And then how or why it is called as science, है ना? How or why it is called as science. Points favor in it, and points like what you say, not in favor of it. So this will, and then you will conclude it. So this will be your brief structure, right? So basically you can use the concept of emergence of sociology, uh, a brief history you will write, you will be writing it if the question is not just about write the emergence of sociology. So you can use that this emergence of sociology in almost like every part of unit 1 and unit 2, right? So you can like you can start the intro basically of all the chapters or the topics in this both the units with a brief history only. So let's proceed with the first part. So you will write initially the emergence of sociology. So when it developed in the background of natural science, है ना, in 18th and 19th century. So natural science was quite prevalent over there, like physics, biology were there. So the thinkers the philosophers who were there, so in order to prove the legitimacy of sociology, they tried to link it with natural science, because if what happens, like suppose if anything new comes in a market, uh, if you want to sell it, or if you want that a customer should know about it, so what you do, you basically try to link it with the product which is already there, है ना? You try to prove your legitimacy with no with that only. So it was the same thing over here also. The previously there were natural science subjects like physics, biology were there, which were based on data, objective, they were too much in objective in nature. So the early sociologists, what they did, they tried to study the society based on this discipline only, right? And slowly we'll see ki then Weber comes, and then other thinkers also come, and they try to like dissociate with this concept, and they try to build other concepts like interpretative sociology, symbolic interrealism, interactionalism, है ना? So this is the main crux of it. So you will write brief history of emergence of sociology, and then the second part, what Auguste Comte and Durkheim are saying, that sociology is a science because it adopts and applies the scientific method. Sociology does make use of scientific method in the study of its subject matter, and sociology is a science. So brief, I mean, not so complicated. You can write it very like very simple definition of it, right? Then the third part, ki why science, it is science because reason, right? Why it is regarded as science. So first is like sociology adopts scientific methods. You know that while studying the sociology, studying the subjects involved in the social institutions, you use methods like case study, interview, questionnaires, है ना? So all the qualitative quantitative methods have been used in the study of sociology. Then second point is sociology makes accurate observations. See, accurate observation in the sense is कि whenever you are trying to study any social institutions, what are you trying to do? You're trying to make like, okay, what is family? Family is basically a people, an institution where a father, mother, and a children lives. So you are trying to make an accurate observation because you are seeing that observation every now and then in a society. So that you are making a observation based on the facts are the institutions. Now, objectivity is possible in sociology. How? See, dowry is a social level, is an objective statement which is based on the facts collected by the sociology, right? Same thing. Ki, what is like you try to first see that concept. Like suppose example, child infants, female infanticide, right? So our child like female girl infanticide. So what is that? Ki you're trying to make an objective statement. Ki no, this is very bad. Females are the girl child are being killed in the initial phase of like when they are born. They have been killed. So and you initially make a statement, and then you try to collect the facts in regard to prove that, right? So this is more of objective in nature. Then sociology describes cause and effect relationship. Example, family disorganization is the cause of a divorce, and population growth is the cause of a poverty. So what is you can what are you saying, like what is the cause and what is the effect? Suppose you can take one more example over here, like suppose domestic violence, right? So what will happen is ki domestic violence, a female sociologist is there, and she will try to say ki domestic violence happens because of alcohol consumption. So domestic violence, why it has happened, effect, the cause of it, and alcohol will cause this particular effect in the society. If domestic violence will happen, this will lead to breaking of marriages, है ना? So what is it like? There is a cause and effect relation between every institution or in every step of it. So similarly, it tries to build a cause and effect, everything it's trying to build. Then sociology makes an accurate measurement. We are using different methods, scientific methods like statistical methods, sociometric scales of measurement of sociology effectively and accurate measures the social relationship, right? Because it is more of link it. We are trying to link it. We are trying to study it based on the natural science. So we are using these methods, and statistical methods are there, like government census. Government comes up with the census based on the data that it's collect, right? So it is more of you can measure measure that institution or that particular society. Then sociology makes generalization. Obviously, like suppose the concept of ancient taboo prohibited sex relationship among the blood relation is is a universal truth. Like you cannot marry someone in your blood relation. So like that's a general theory ki, like no person can like no family or no um, family basically anywhere in the world allows a person to marry within its blood relation. You can like this is more of relate, you can relate with the Indian society. So it is trying to build a general theory. Suicide also, take the example of suicide. How Durkheim also tried to make a general theory based on this only. So suicide also you can put religion. What is religion? It is a basic, it is an integration. It tries to integrate the society. So it is making a general theory on a macro theory, you can say, basically. So it is trying to build a macro theory. Now then comes, now what is happening, now we are proceeding to the second, we are in the second part of the structure only, where we will try to like why it is not science. Right, why it is not science. So Weber was the first sociologist, or you can say ki major propounder of it, who came up later in the phase, and he tries to say ki uh, there cannot be an objective science or society, since social actions must be understood in terms of the meaning that person attached to it. You cannot make a general theory, you cannot be very much objective in nature in regard with study of society. You have to study the subjects involved in that particular institution in order to understand this society, how they are understanding this institution. That is necessary, rather than making a general theory ki what is family, what is marriage, what is suicide, or what is alcoholism. So based on that, you cannot make a general theory in how the society is prevailing, but rather the subjects involved in it, you should try to understand from their perspective. So why it is not, it lacks objectivity. How sociologist has his own prejudice and bias, hence he cannot observe his subjects with complete detachment. The researcher who will be trying to study that particular social institution, he might be biased in terms of studying that institution. So if the biasness comes, objectivity goes. It's like he need to be kind of, he attaches values in his study. So if value is attached, personal values are attached, then objective nature of the study will dissolve. Then it lacks experiment. Obviously, I mean, science is what is science? Science, you basically try to study about the matter and all, right? If you know ki like at 100 degrees Celsius water will boil. So it is what it is. It is basically based on the experiments that you have conducted. But you can't do this the same thing uh, on the human beings. Like today, if I'm getting up at 6 o'clock. So it's not necessary that tomorrow also I'll be getting it up at 6 o'clock. If today the organization of family is joint, it's not necessary that tomorrow or after 10 years the family again will be having a conception of jointness. So they will change, right? With the period of time and with the institutions involved in and around it. So it lacks experiment. You are not trying to experiment. C can't weigh the human relation because it is abstract in nature, right? So I guess you can uh, understand that. Lack of prediction. We can't predict what will be one's behavior at certain point of time, nor we can predict about the trends of social change. How, what I explained before, the same point over here. Then it lack of accurate measurement. Obviously it's a human behavior. Human behavior is involved, and if human is involved, his consciousness will be involved in it, and consciousness cannot be same, so you cannot measure anything accurately in regard with the human involved in that particular institution. So it lacks accurate measurement. Then you cannot go for generalization, because human behavior is involved and no two individuals are alike. So obviously their understanding will with regard to that institution will be different. So you cannot make a generalized theory in regard with it. Then comes terminology inefficiency. There are many terms used in this sociology like caste, class, है ना? So they are more of like they are very vague in nature. There is no hard and fast definition in regard with it that you can differentiate what is caste, what is class, and they sometimes intermingle also. Are they intermix in? Are they are used interchangeably? You can say that in the case of India, caste and caste are basically interchangeable. Like you can use, some people are using it is a caste based society, some are saying no, it is a class based society, no, it is a caste and class based society. Similarly, gender, what is gender? Gender is very much over a period of time, gender is also like having a different definitions. Sociologists are still trying to study this particular topic, right? So these are the things. So it is basically lacking the terminology deficiency also, inefficiency. And then you'll try to conclude it that sociology as a discipline evolved over a period of time from early positivist approach to non-positivist and later postmodernism approach, realizing it to be the study of society which cannot be considered absolute. Obviously, over a period of time you evolve, and this was the same thing with the sociology. Now let's see the third question. Third question is participant observation. So basically, write a short note on participant observation. What is participant observation? It is basically a scientific method, a scientific study uh, involved involved in order to study the social institutions. So basically, what it is, researchers becomes a part of the group to be studied in order to carry out the observations. Participate. The researchers tries to participate in that, or tries to gets involved in that particular institution which he is trying to observe. So this is what it is. So what will be your structure? You will write a brief, or you will define it, right? After that, how it is done, you can write it. How it is done? How it is done? It is done by getting involved, like becoming a native member of that particular institution, है ना? And then the advantages, disadvantages, and then you will conclude it. So this is the brief structure of this question. So yes, we defined what is participant observation, and then how it is done by becoming a native member, है ना? By adopting the status or positions in the group and carrying out the concurrent role. है ना? If you want to study a particular tribe in Andaman, the researcher has to go to that place. He tries to he tries to like make himself native of that particular tribe in order to make them what you say, in order to get a reception in that particular tribe na. So that is what it is, that is what the participant observation tries to, that is how he tries to study the social institution. Now what are the advantages of it? This technique offers several advantages over other sociological methods. Like what are it? Participant observation allows the researchers to see what people do rather than what they say they do. है This is basically when you get involved in that particular institution, you get to know ki what is happening. So you are the first, or you are collecting the primary data of that particular institutions, right? Based on your facts or your data, the other data or secondary data will be collected. So if you are reading a book, that's a secondary data, because book might be written by someone who might have observed it or might have participated in that particular institution and written that particular book or theory. So this is what is a major advantage of it, that what people do rather than what people say they do, and you are able to see that. Then second is takes place in a natural setting. You are in the subjects you are in the subject's environment in order to study that, है ना? So it is basically the natural environment, a natural setting of that particular subject, and then the researchers try to study that subject. So obviously it will give a first hand information of our first hand data of that particular institution. Then the third point is length time and ethnographic spend with a community means that close bonds that can be established of if a researcher is like suppose trying to study a tribe, he gets close with them in order to study them, so he makes a close bond with them. So with this he can dig deeper, and with other methods also he can use like he can inquire and he can ask more questions in regard with the institution. Then it involves a Verstehen or empathetic understanding. Verstehen, well, it will try to understand the social institution from the persons involved in it. है ना? So what is tribe, a person will define. What is tribe, a person will define. But what is happening in a participant observation, the tribe who are called as tribe, he tries to understand from their perspective what they understand, or what is their bondness, or what how they try to profess or perform religion, है ना? So they, the subjects in this tribes, he tries to understand from their perspective. Then flexibility and generating new ideas. It will generate new ideas, right? How? It allows researchers to enter a situation with an open minded. As new settings are encountered, they can be followed up. Like what happens, like if if you're going with a question, so you go there and you see a different whole lot of different situation. Let's again take that example of that tribe only. He's trying to study that tribe, but when he goes over there, he sees ki there is a whole lot of famine going on in there. So now he came with a suppose he came with some pre questions that he will be asking to the tribes in regard with the institutions or their practices, but he sees a whole lot of different situation over there. Now these questions were prepared for a normal situation, but now there is a whole lot of different situation. So now what this participant observation method advantage is ki it can make the researcher adjust based on the situation which is prevalent in that particular society. So this will the questions now what the researcher will be asking will be whole lot of different, like how what they understand from famine, what is how they are relating the famine, or what do you say, how they are trying to relate the famine with their society. So he will try to understand based on that what are they doing, how they are handling the situation. All these things will be, he will try to ask whole lot of different questions based on the situation which is prevalent over there. Then the few practical advantages with this method, but participant observation might be the only method for gaining access to certain groups. Obviously if you want to like suppose want, for example, researcher using questionnaire to research a street gangs is likely to be seen as an authority figure, unlikely to be accepted, right? So if you want to see why a drug is very much prevalent in some parts of India, so the researcher, he cannot like pre make a question, like he can uh, predefine the questions, and then he can approach to the persons or the subjects involved in that drug thing. Rather he need to be a part of that culture where the drug is been practiced. In order to study that, he need to participate in that particular uh, culture or that institution in order to study it much better. So he need to be more acceptable, and this observation method gives you that advantage. Then again it avoids a master and a client relationship. It will build a concurrent relation with the like with the subject. The researcher will make a concurrent relation with the subject. Now what are the limitations of this? It has low degree of reliability. Reliability means It is not necessary that whatever the information that I am getting this time, the similar information I will be getting again when I come next after 5 years or after 10 years. So it is having a low degree of reliability. Study relies on personal skills and characteristics of the lone researcher. If I'm good at convincing a people, so if I'll try to study a tribe, I'll try to study, if I'm good in convincing, so I'll try to make my theory based on many people involved in it, right? But if suppose a different researcher comes and he is not so good in convincing the people, so he just collects the information from the mukhia or the head of the tribe. So what is happening, okay, like it is low. The information that he will be getting and I will be getting will be totally whole lot of a difference, so it will be having a low degree of reliability. Then low degree of representativeness. What it is? Unrepresentative because they are assessed through snowball samplings and haphazardly selected. Now what is happening, like I'm haphazardly selecting, okay, I will try to understand this institution from you, or from X person, or from Y person only, or based on that, right? And but the other person comes and he tries to say, I will try to study the society from Z person, from A person. So what it is, you are trying to first haphazardly select the subjects, है ना? You're not very much like what do you say, planned in regard with the study. So if there is no proper planning, the execution might differ in every case. So that is what low degree of representativeness is there, because unrepresented because they are assessed through snowball samplings and haphazardly selected. Then critics are also there in a method lacks objectivity. In extreme cases, researchers might go native, where they become sympathetic with the respondent and omit any negative analysis of their way of life. Now biasness might come when he is too much involved in that particular institution, right? So his if he attaches the value or his biasness, and then the objectivities of that particular research is lost. Then comes threat to validity is the Hatron effect. Hatron effect is like suppose if you are trying to study any subject, है ना? So if subjects, like he knows कि like someone is trying to observe him, so if he sees कि like someone is trying to observe him, he tries to modify his behavior. He changes his original behavior, right? Getting it? It's basically a fact that people will modify their behavior simply because they are being observed. So this is very much common. This is pretty much common. If you take a camera with you, go on a street and try to study study a village, how study the voting behavior in a particular village. So if you are going with a camera, and what if you are asking the persons whom did you vote, or what was your criteria based on which you voted. So he will see 2 3 persons saying a particular party's name, so even he will try to say that particular party's name. Rather he might have chosen someone else, but he will say the same party's name what the other persons are saying, because he's seeing like someone is observing me, and so that is the thing. Then lack a concept of social structure. I mean, obviously it is trying to study from the individual perspective. So individual is initially involved, and based on that a social structure has been built, right? So individuality is more in there. Then time consuming and expensive in relation to other methods. Obviously it will be more time consuming because you are trying to collect the qualitative data in this. Then requires observational and interpersonal skills that not everyone possesses. In order to get participate in a particular research, you need to have a good interpersonal skill, then only you will be acceptable in that particular institution. Gaining access can also be a problem, definitely. Then ethical problems and legality may arise, that researcher working with the deviant groups may have to do illegal acts in order to maintain their cover. If you're trying to study drug gang, so I mean even you have to go undercover and you have to do that. So even you are doing that illegal thing, na? So even that ethical issues are also involved in it. But then we will conclude it. But despite all this, it addresses the deficiency of positivism. It was like positivism, deficiency of positivism, and it tries to make a balance in the society as sociological studies. So this will be the thing. Now let's proceed to the other question. Next question. So the question is, write a short note on questionnaire. So now what will be our structure? We will try to define it. Then we will try why questionnaire is being used. Then what are the characteristics of it, its advantages, limitations, and what what are the preventive measures need to be adopted in order to use this method, like cautiousness. So this will be our framework for this question. So what is questionnaire? Questionnaire is like a list of preset questions that the researcher designs and administers to sample the population to conduct research. And then why it is a preferred technique. Second part of the thing, the sample size is large and widely dispersed, more quantitative than qualitative in nature. The researcher is familiar with the area of study to ask the relevant question. The sample study is willing and able to express themselves in words, that is, must be literate. Then what are the characteristics of it? It can be an open-ended. Choices of responses left to the respondent, usually used when qualitative data and subjective viewpoint is sought. Like suppose for example, question and answer, subjective question and answer, like what is, like how we are doing over here, what is sociology. So you will try to write an answer for it. So the second is the close-ended response. Close-ended response, basically what is happening in this key, MCQ type. Take example of MCQ. MCQ is more of close-ended, and subjective question answers are more of open-ended, right? Subjective question and answer are more of open-ended. So now we will proceed to the third part. What are the advantages of it? What are the advantages? It is easy to codify, right? And you know what is, because it is a preset, so you can easily codify or you can easily break it. Easy to generalize, cost effective, quick and reliable. Data can be cross-checked, hence it is preferred by positivists. Positivists basically used this data, more of like a natural science approach, na? So positivists were using this. Then what are the limitations of it? Researchers often ask lending questions which may prompt the respondents to answer the question in a way that researchers decides. Now his questions might be in a such a way that the respondent or the subject, he will be answering the question like how the researcher wants, right? Suppose let's take an example of a math equation, a math question. And so if the question is something, and so what the questionnaire or the person who is asking, the researcher, he will be just like framing the question in such a way that you have to answer the question similar how the researcher wants it, not based on your understanding but based on the researcher's requirement or his requestic nature. Then a respondent may also like to project himself morally or socially correct while answering the question, lending to social desirability biasness. Suppose a question has been asked on what do you drug, or you can say not drug, if you go with suppose domestic violence है ना. Okay, no, no, let's like suppose the question has been asked on encounter है ना. Is encounter good or bad? So what he will try to project himself being good in nature. So what he will do, he will try to say ki no, encounter is not so, encounter is very bad, and we should not be doing. Rather, in his own self, if he might have been, he would have been saying ki no, encounter is very good, it gives on spot result, so it is very good. But as the question is asked and he sees ki the question will be checked by the researcher again, that remember Hawthorne effect that we studied in the participant observation. Yeah, so he knows ki like this question will be will be checked by the researcher, so he will try to make a morally or socially acceptable answer. Then questionnaires also suffer from non-response bias of respondent. That is, if a large population of respondent refuse to answer the question, the survey will be biased in favor of those who choose the answer. We can relate it to the voting behavior present in the prevalent time. है ना? If most people vote for nota concept was all regard. You can relate to it with that. Then postal questionnaires have a poor return rate and hence may not represent the sample population adequately and may suffer from response bias. Postal questionnaires are very much in they lack the poor return rate. So obviously, if return is you're missing the major sample size, so obviously your data or your research will be based on very few samples, so it might not be so reliable or so valid. Then further, different members of different social groups may attach different values to the context of the question. Values, if person attaches the answer or the answer to that particular question, obviously will differ. So every person in a similar society will have different values. So different, based on the values, the answers will be also different, right? Then it is argued that when researcher decides which questions have to be asked, especially in printed question, he has already decided what is important and hence he suffers from his own biasness. Obviously, the researcher can also be biased. He decides that he picks the question based on his biasness. Okay, this is important. This is like, suppose example is like in our school days, what used to happen, like teacher used to give some important questions na. So that he or she is trying to be biased na. He's saying ki, like, this question is important in this particular chapter. Rather, it might be important, it might not be important, that might differ na. So this is the thing. It can also be not used when the target group is illiterate. Obviously, when the people doesn't know about that particular institution and you are trying to ask them about it, so their response will be more of like their response or their data, whatever the researcher will be collecting based on that, will not be so much valid or so much reliable, because the illiterate are the persons who are not knowing about that particular institutions are involved in it. So this might happen. It might misdirect by the person who guides such a person. Now, what are the cautions? Now, what are the preventive measures that you need to be exercising in order to perform this? It should be non-ambiguous, precise, and may not be misinterpreted. Researchers should be very much clear and cut in order to ask these questions. It should be very simple in language, non-ambiguous, and it should be very precise in nature. Then administered to a homogeneous group which is literate. If you want to ask a particular question, so you ask the particular population who is involved in that particular institution, rather than the one who is not. Then return rate is very low, reducing validity. So you should make sure that validity is maintained, because if return rate is less, validity obviously will decline. Then it prevents new discoveries. I responded can't furnish information that isn't asked. Like, it is not so open ended. how the participant observation was. So it is very much predefined. Na? This question is asked, so the answer will be this only. So it is very much like hard and fast. But you cannot like go on researching on what is not been asked. So then we will conclude it. Overall, the technique is made use both qualitative and quantitative paradigms. It is used today by almost all sociologists. Today, every examination has been carried out with the process of MCQ only. So basically, questionnaire thing is only going on. Interviews have been like not taken in many examinations. So you can relate it with the contemporary society. Now let's proceed to the next question. What it is? Reliability and validity. So what will be our structure for this? We will write the intro. What is reliability? What is validity? And then you will conclude it. Right. So this will be your structure. So what is intro? You can write very much like it is basically a observation method. It is a method through which a researcher tries to establish his observation or tries to establish studies an institution. So first, what is reliability? The second part, what is reliability? It is basically a type of sample, which means that upon repetitive testing, the sample produces the same result. It is an important parameter to measure the robustness of data. So over and over and again, if the data that has been collected is similar in nature, then it is more of reliable. Then it is reliable data, that every time whenever you try to boil a water, it boils at 100 degrees Celsius, right? Every time you try to what you say suppose for example study that like suppose you study the population of Bhubaneswar, and you try to study population of Bhubaneswar, their concept of religion. So every time you study the religion in Bhubaneswar, the population of Bhubaneswar, they will try to say always one thing ki like, yeah, Jagannath or the god is great, and he should be worshipped. People should go to the temple. Every time whenever the researcher is going, he is getting the same answer again and again. So that is what is reliable. So hence the data in regard with religion, that it is an important aspect in a person life, that is reliable in regard with the religion. So this is what reliability is. So it is basically positivist or quantitative in nature. So basically the early sociologists were using this method of observation. Like suppose example of Durkheim, you can quote Durkheim also. His study of society as a social institution was based on this only. What he did, like he collected all the data from the European police stations, and he tried to build a theory based on it. So what he did, he tried to study it from the data from the every police stations from the European nations, and he tried to make a general theory ki like, okay, this is the cause of a suicide. Again he went to the other police station and he found that ki okay, it is again the similar cause is there for the same effect, so for the same effect, the suicide. So every police station or every data that he collected, he got the same result. So his suicide theory is more of based on this thing only. Then reliability is of two type: temporal reliability, comparative reliability, right? These are two types. Reliability raises many technical problems in quantitative research for sociologists, as subject changes their mind as time passes. Obviously, if today religion as a concept has been what is prevalent today, it was not so much, or what you say, it was not the same in the traditional society. So it changes with time. So reliability may also be questioned. Or reliability is not so much, what do you say, a very method might change with time, right? So reliability in research can be improved by inculcating objectivity in the method. Approaches like standardization of process and methods also increases reliability. If you include the objectivity in that method, so the reliability might change or might be more acceptable. Then the third part of our structure, what is validity? It is basically the degree of achieving the intended result. Like how often you are hitting, like suppose there is this result that you have to achieve, okay, and that result, how often you are receiving or you are getting close to that intended result that you wanted. Like suppose example, we'll take a simple example, like suppose family is an cohabitation of so marriage is basically a cohabitation of two opposite genders or two opposite persons living together and socially accepted, है ना? So every time whenever you are trying to see a society and you are trying to get that particular result, that particular intended result, what the researcher has been defined, like suppose again you can take an example of science also, like 100 degrees Celsius water boils, right? So every time you are boiling the water and it is on 100 degrees Celsius, है ना? This is very much like experimentally proven. So it is very much like this is the result. This is very much like proven result. So every time if the water is boiling in and around 100 degrees Celsius, then it is a valid data, right? I guess you understood it. Then four types are there: internal, external, measurement, and ecological validity. It is more of like interpretative sociology argues that validity is not possible in sociology by use of scientific method, as human consciousness cannot be captured using any method. And interpretative sociology was more of like human consciousness. So they said कि like if human consciousness comes into play, then validity and reliability like goes off. So you can understand this concept from this diagrams. Reliable, not valid, because this is the intended result in the center, and but whatever the data, whatever the researcher is getting every time whenever he is trying to collect the data, he is trying to get the same result in and around what he got at the first time. So this is more of reliable but not intended. This is the result, but it is not much intended towards the result. So it is not valid but reliable. Now what is happening in this case, every time the researcher is going, he is getting a different response or different data. So uh, it is not valid and not, so it is valid nor reliable, not reliable. It is valid because it is more of like it is intended towards the result only. Then this is both reliable and valid because it is in the intended result what the researcher wants, and every time the researcher, whatever he is getting repetitive analysis of that particular subject, he is getting in and around that particular every time he is getting the same observation. Similarly, neither reliable nor valid because it is more of scattered in nature. Similar is this also. This is also, I guess it should be nor valid. No, nor valid, not reliable. This is also the same. This both are same only. Just try to just eliminate this. It's reliable, not valid. Reliable, not valid. Then both reliable and valid. More of intended towards the goal, so it is valid also. Not intended towards the goal, it is not valid. And this both are same only. It is nor valid, I mean, because it's not valid because it is not much intended, it is more scattered in nature. Again over here also it is more scattered in nature. So not reliable, not valid, not intended towards the goal. Neither you are getting the same response every time whenever you're going for the research. So this is the thing. And then you will conclude, therefore both are considered important parameters for sample robustness. Now the next question, hypothesis and its role in scientific study. So what will be your structure? You will initially define hypothesis, role of hypothesis, right? Then how it is performed, and then you will conclude it. right? So what is hypothesis? Hypothesis is nothing but it is like a prediction that a researcher tries to make to reach a outcome. For example, let's suppose, take an example of, um, suppose you are going for a movie whose name is suppose let's take a movie, let's name it movie called as Criminal, right? The movie name is Criminal. So what you will try to make a like a preconceived notion based of that movie based on the name, that okay, the name is Criminal, so obviously it will not be so much romantic in nature, है there might be some guns and fightings, all that will be involved. So what you are trying to build is hypothesis. You're trying to build a hypothesis. That is what is hypothesis. But when you go there, you see something different. So that's the different thing. But based on the particular institution, first, before studying, the researcher tries to make a hypothesis of that particular institution, right? So it is a pre-theory or before theory of any institution. So how it is done also, you can write that based on investigation and it is basically a basic unit also, basic unit of any research or institution. How cell is of human being, how brick is of wall, similar is hypothesis of theory, right? So this is the thing. Now what is the role of hypothesis? I can write it, right? Hypothesis first is an operating tool of theory, right? Then acts as a pointer to inquiry. It will like okay, like in which direction you have to proceed, the theory should be proceeding. Third, hypothesis enable us to select the relevant and preferent facts and makes our task easier. Now okay, like okay, this is how I need to approach, है ना? So if you know how to approach, then obviously your data collection and facts collection will be quite easier, because you have planned and okay, like this is how I need to study my theory. Then hypothesis provides guidelines by way of providing the direction. It is pointing to inquiry, enabling to select the pertinent facts, and helping to draw a specific conclusion. It helps to draw all that because you have pre-made a theory, right? So it will be very easier for the researcher to do all this. Like he can easily conclude that data, and he can easily enable and point the inquiry in which direction it should be proceeding. Finally, the hypothesis plays a significant role in facilitating the advancement of knowledge beyond one's value and opinions. In real terms, science is incomplete without hypothesis. You right? So I guess you can understand this. Formulating hypothesis and then you will try to conclude it. Can take place at a very beginning of a research, right? And whenever hypothesis is formulated, the most important thing is to be precise what's one's variables and on the nature of relationship between them and met. And the sources, basically the hypothesis, what can be the sources, like based on the observation, based on the post observation, based on the culture and traditions, है ना? कि suppose if you go to a bathroom, or if you like put on a switch with wet hands, you will always get you will get a shock. So what is happening, like you have made an observation in regard with कि if it's wet, then you will get shock. So when you have now, based on the observation, you have built a hypothesis, right? So next time what will happen, you will, whenever any person going with his wet hands, you will try to stop that person, right? So this is the source of it. And then personal experiences are also there. Social change also plays a major source for hypothesis. But all this can be wrong also, right? Because what happens ki like let's suppose take one example. Suppose we say ki if a researcher makes a study or hypothesis कि Group study leads to good result, because the students involved in it, they try to share their information, and hence everyone will be benefited and a good result will come. But this might not also be true. This is a hypothesis what the researcher is building. A group study is results in group result, but over a period of time, over a theory, he will see that this is not always true, because there might be some deviance. Like suppose in group study people might be coming together and they might be doing a party, they might not be studying, they might be playing PUBG or something else and all, etc. So this might deviate, or this might like be not the hypothesis what he built. So over a period of time theory might be changing. And you can also write the characters, like what are the how the hypothesis should be. It should be simple in language, right? It should be verifiable and it should be logical. These three basically should be the characters of hypothesis. Simple in language should be there. It should be simple in nature. If you make a pre-theory only so much complicated, then how will you study the society, or how will you be proceeding for the theory? And then verifiable, it should be, you should be able to verify that theory also, that hypothesis, whatever you are making, so that when the theory is completed, so you can verify that okay, yeah, this is okay, this whatever hypothesis I built, it was based on these facts and these figures, so yeah, okay, this is now correct. And it should be more of logical. You can't just go and pick up random any topic and you can try to do that. You're trying to build a hypothesis on that. You need to be very much logical in your approach. So this was the thing. I guess you can write the answer on all this, right? Role of hypothesis, you can write the sources, you can write the character of hypothesis, what is hypothesis, you can quote some examples, no? Whatever I've said, you can add on your examples also. Now let's proceed to the long questions. From here the long question starts. Sociology as an interpretative discipline. So what will be your structure? What is interpretative discipline? Then view of thinker, the major propounder, Weber. His method, what the method are the tools that he suggested in order to study this interpretative discipline. Then interpretative view, methods, then differences, how it is different from other sociological approaches, and then you will try to conclude it. Right, this will be your structure. So what is interpretative sociology? Interpretative sociology is nothing but like discovering the meaning that people attaches to their social world. Social world means social institutions. So what the people attaches the meaning to that particular institution is what is interpretative sociology. It is basically a micro study of a particular institution. है So a little background was that like positivist were there, and they tried to build a macro approach of a social institution. In contrary to this, interpretative sociology develops. Weber was major propounder of it, and he tries to build a micro sociological approach based on micro study, that key the individual's meaning attached to that particular institutions need to be studied in order to understand that institutions properly, because it might differ, the understanding and the human consciousness from person to person might differ. So obviously the institution for me and for you cannot be the same. The meaning attached to that particular institution cannot be the same. Like suppose father is a social figure, right? For me, father is someone who is very much who should be very much muscular in nature, and he should be very masculine. For you, the father should be one who should be very much caring in nature. So the difference, there is a difference in like the values or the meaning that we are attaching to that this particular institution, right? So yes, Max Weber, he suggests that he gives an example of like the chopping of a wood or the aiming of a gun. So he says ki like the chopping of a wood can have different motives. it can be motive for recreation, or it can be that because he is working for fit of rage, he's trying to take out his anger, that's why he is cutting the wood. Or it might be because he is doing it for the living. So there might be different meanings. The actor is attaching, and the subject is attaching a different meaning to his institutions. So we need to understand that meanings, right? So for understanding that meanings, he said he proposed some scientific methods, like what how you need to understand that meanings now, what the subject is involved are like using to study that particular institution. So what are the meanings that he how you need to understand this. He gave a versatile approach, a method. What he says ki literally means comprehending or understanding at the level of an actor. Now how this need to be done, he gives simple steps in regard with this, that investigators should reconstruct the situational choice and constraints of the actor, है ना. Then investigator should be at the same wavelength of that actor. Investigator should not have any sympathy, can use primary source of data collection to establish the meaning, right. Then the second tool that he says is idle type. There should be certain idle types that need to be built, so that when you are doing a study, you need to, like, okay, this is the idle of this particular action, this is an idle type of this particular action. So if the respondent or if the actor is performing this particular actions, then he's reaching, or he's in this idle type. For example, he gives a 4 idle types, like traditional social action, which are meanings are drawn from certain beliefs and traditions. Like if your actions are based on your traditional beliefs and traditions, then that action is traditional idol type, right. So this is more least conscious, है ना, because everything is attached to you from beforehand only. Because why are you worshipping, or why you worship is like a tradition, because my parents are worshipping, so I am doing it, kind of a thing. Then affective social action, the second idol type, he says ki it is more of affective in nature, means emotions are more of attached in it. Then Zek rational, it is the most rational and logical ended approach, a goal oriented approach that a person adopts. Then his social action is known as Zek rational. If it is then the fourth type is word rational. What it is basically the values are attached by the society, and then the actor takes a logical action in order to fulfill that goal. Values are attached by the society, and when the actor performs the actions based on his consciousness, but the values are predefined by the society, then that social action is known as word rational. And the third method he said was ki casual realistic, means no monocausal explanation can be there for a particular understanding of that particular institution. There can be many different, because many different views or what do you say, explanations or meaning our actor can attach to that particular institution based on the situation that is prevalent over there. So there cannot be one monocausal explanation. He rejects that. Right. So then what is how it is different from the prevailing approach that was prevalent over that time? How it was different? First, the concept of positivism was developed by French sociologists like Auguste Comte and Emile Durkheim. Interpretative, Max Weber was a major propounder. George Simmel was also one. So, and then positivist sociology aims at understanding the social institution by relying on observation and knowledge fact, cause and effect. है ना? But this understanding the meaning behind the action through the subject's position within the system, from the subject's position. Then positivist sociology sees an objective reality out there. It is more of objective in nature, but this is not so much objective in nature, rather it tries to construct by the people according to their own understanding. Then positivist sociology make use of quantitative methods and data, and it uses qualitative methods, right. So yes, this is the thing, and then we will proceed to the last part. It is limitations. What are the limitations of this? It is possible that observation can be influenced by his personal biasness. Whatever the like a researcher who is trying to study that particular institution, he might be personal biased in order to study that institution. So he might choose the particular subject who he thinks is like is necessary or who he thinks is more reliable in nature. So it is he's attaching his values or his biasness in that. So there can be a personal biasness in that. Then the direct observation also requires a prior knowledge of the culture. Being qualitative in nature, what happens is like you need to first understand what culture that particular subject is uh, there. So first you try to study that culture, and then you try to understand his actions. Based on that, you try to build a theory like his understanding of society. So it is more of time taking in nature. It assumes that people in society considers their action to be rational, which may not always be the case. Everyone will be thinking that their action is more of rational in nature, and this cannot be always true, right? Because observer doesn't know that. It can also be regarded as an inadequate account of action, since it remains exclusively individualistic. Being individualistic in nature, individuals are involved, so there might be different meaning based on human consciousness. So you cannot come up to a general theory, what is family, what is marriage, and then you cannot define any social institution, because everyone will be having a different meaning to different institutions. So that is also one of the limitations of interpretative sociology. Then then we will conclude it saying like it is also one of the important study for understanding the society, right? You can define it very like you can be simple in the conclusion all. Then comes the second long question type: role of industrialization and French Revolution on the emergence of sociology. What it is, yes, emergence of sociology. Now you know ki, how what should be our structure. You can write a brief you can you can write initially in the intro the emergence of sociology, then how it emerged. Under this you can come up with there was a dark age, है ना? Dark age led to the age of enlightenment, है ना? Like basically Renaissance phase, है ना? Renaissance phase wait a second. Renaissance phase was what happened in Renaissance phase. There was intellectual revolution happened, then scientific revolution happened, commercial revolution happened, है ना? Modernity came. Now modernity has like different proponent, like economic modernity came, political modernity came, social intellectual modernity came, and this modernity led to many social problems which were not prevalent beforehand. Now in order to study these problems, sociology as a discipline emerged, right? So this is the thing. Modernity, industrial revolution comes basically in the economic part of the modernity, and the industries started to come up, and the relationship between the people, is the solidarity that people were maintaining in the traditional society changed altogether. Now the capitalist are based on money, supply, demand and supply. The relation between the people changed. A different whole lot of different class called as middle class also developed. So all these things were happening, and this led to a social problem. What kind of social problem it led to? Ki, how what Marx says, that alienation started coming up, and as there was a change, anomy was also happening. Anomy, what Durkheim says, and there was like too much of inequality in the society, है ना? So these were the social problems that were coming up because of the economic revolution that happened, है ना? Industrialization. Then French Revolution comes in the second part, comes in the political revolution that happened because of modernity led to economic, political, social and intellectual revolutions. So political revolution, there was French Revolution happened. French Revolution, what was their main what do you say, the principal subjects were like equality, liberty, fraternity, है ना. Democracy become like a notion of whatever the society was establishing during that phase. So but the people, what happened, like French Revolution happened, people demanded for equality, fraternity, and democracy, but they didn't know how to proceed further. They just demanded it, and then they didn't know how to proceed further. They were unsure, like how the democracy will function. It was because it was very much uncertain, uncertain and very much in sudden. So a chaos happened in a society. So this led to many problems. Like people were not not able to choose a leader who should be making rules, or how the things should be proceeding. They were not very much like uncertain in regard with that. So the chaos happened, and then in the chaos, in order to understand that chaos, a sociology as a discipline emerged, right? Then social revolution was also happening, है ना. Social revolution was what, like migration, है ना. Migration, or like migration, then that led to nuclear family, education was coming up, and different other communication networks have been set up, right? So these all things were set up. But nuclear family, hence nuclear family set up, jointness of family brick, like there was a change in that. And there were too many cases of domestic violence prevalent in that time. So domestic violence, why initially traditional society, the domestic violence was quite less in number. Why? Because there was jointness, there were, the families were more of joint in nature. So if they were joint, like elder members were always present there in the family or in the house. But it was a nuclear, so only father and mother are there, like two persons are there. So domestic violence cases also raised, and then education also improved, and all these things were the social revolution which led. But this also led to the problem, like how I said, domestic violence led to the problem, and domestic violence raised, and things like pickpocketing and all. These crimes were not known before. So this all things came up. This also led then these problems were been studied. In order to study this problem, sociology emerged. Then intellectual revolution happened. Intellectual revolution, what happened in this? Now everything, like whatever the intellectuals were coming, they were trying to build a theory based on the evidence and reasons. Like if there is a evidence and a particular reason attached to it, then only that particular theory should be, that particular study should be done. So but then also they become very much critical in nature, and hence like what should be studied, what is reliable, what this reason is necessary or not, no. So this also like led to some chaos, or like uncertainty. And then hence sociology came up, like tried to build a gap, tried to build a bridge in between. Okay, this is how it should be studied. I mean, sociologically it should be studied, and human consciousness should be involved in it, rather than trying to be too much critical. So yes, this is the basic crux of how the emergence of sociology happened. As over here in this question, it was just asked like industrialization and French Revolution. So we will just focus on this only in order to study the emergence of sociology. So we will write a brief history of sociological emergence. What was the role of industrialization, industrial revolution? What was industrial revolution? Right, impacts of industrial revolution. Then I told you before what were there. You can read the model answer. Then what were the significant themes of industrial revolution, like the condition of labor, transformation of property as a concept came into being, and urbanization started happening, technology and factory system came up. Then you will write key French Revolution. And now industrial revolution marks like he gave a conflict theory. Rather, on the other hand, Durkheim said ki, no, it is a functionalist theory. Based on functionalist theory, he gave a theory ki, like it is functional in nature for the society. There should be, I mean, this thing should be prevalent, and because it maintains order in a society. So that was the thing. Then French Revolution. What is French Revolution? Impact of French Revolution, है ना. What was the impact? First, in asserting the reality of individuals' freedom and right, the revolution shook the political and social foundation. Second, the economic and political consciousness of revolution rocked the foundation of feudal society. Feudal society, which was prevalent before in the Dark Ages and all, like 14th, 15th century feudal, they were very much not so receptionist towards the society who they were governing to, है ना? So third, the political and social changes came up, which like inward looking and introspective existence, है ना? This things were like totally breakdown. So this was the thing, and then the stages led to the development of autonomous social theories. Now these were the theories. You can read this, and then you can conclude this, that these two were played a very major role in order to led to the emergence of sociology as a main theme, है ना? So this is the thing. Now let's proceed to the fourth question: objectivity and value neutrality. What should be our approach in this? We will initially write an intro where you can write the emergence of sociology. Then you can write what is objectivity and what is value neutrality, how it can be achieved, and then you can conclude it, right? So yes, the basic brief emergence of sociology, it emerged based French industrial revolution happened. There was a modernity led to certain issues tried problems and issues that now that problems and issue led to the new discipline, which was sociology. So now what is objectivity? Objectivity is an approach in which the attitude of investigator is detached or unprejudiced, value free, or free from biasness. It is basically focuses upon a goal or object and avoids distractions, है ना? So objective, the person is very much objective, like he's very much goal oriented, and he knows ki like this is I have to achieve this point, I have to achieve, and he's very much into it only. He's not trying to attach his values, or he's not trying to be prejudiced to that particular institution. So the early sociologists were more of applying this objectivity in their research, because objectivity is more of related with the natural science, so they were trying to relate it, or trying to study the sociology based on the natural science only. So it was more or less objective in nature, like Durkheim's in his macro functionalist approach. But it is always been criticized, this objectivity theory, है ना? Objectivity theory is basically criticized. Why? Because it is this is key. This can be value loaded also. It is not necessary that a particular theory can be value neutral. The researchers can attach a value in that, and when the value comes, objectivity goes. We understood that. So this in the 19th century, the emergence of non-positivist, here Weber, you can quote Weber. This is the quote of Weber, that complete objectivity was neither desirable nor achievable. You cannot achieve that because human consciousness comes into play, and when human consciousness comes into play, you cannot say what is right and what is wrong, because for everyone there might be a different understanding, a different meaning attached to that particular institution, right? So what happens, like basically we accumulate the facts, है ना? In accumulation of facts only the biasness might come, value of the researcher might attach values in it. Then interpretation of facts can be based on the values that are morals that the person is in a society. A researcher with functional bias may tend to interpret some extreme forms of inequalities in a functional terms. Like suppose functionalists like Durkheim, what he said, to an extent, suicide or criminal uh, is necessary in a society. Like criminals should be there in a society. If criminals are there, then only the other institutions like police, judiciary will be able to function. So he, what is he trying to say is कि like कि the extreme, like this institution should all should, like, the, what do you say, which is morally not correct, those institutions are also uh, prevalent, they should also be prevalent in the society in order to make a balance with other institutions, because this will only this is functional in nature, this criminalization. Society, to an extent, society is also necessary, because if society is there, population will be controlled, other people are there, might be inquiry, so people can understand the society also. So these all things were like he's trying to like the abnormal, or what you say, the extreme forms, he was trying to make them also functional. Then formulation of theories. Formulation of theories can be value loaded. Durkheim generated a functional theory of religion where Marx considered religion as an opium of masses. Formulation, like for religion was a concept. For Durkheim it was different. It was integration. But for Marx it was basically a hurt for a heartless. So it was basically a opium of masses for him, which was being, religion is nothing but being built by the capitalist in order to make to control the slaves. So a slave in a polythreads. So this was the thing. So religion can be different for, like, theories may be built based on their understanding. He was conflict and he tried to build conflict theory. He was more of functionalist in nature, so he tried to create a function in that religion. So Max Weber, in his methodology of social science, argued that values be tolerated at initial level of social. So what Max Weber says is कि like कि um, when you are framing a research, you can initially attach a value. Like researcher can attach a value um, to that particular research on which he is trying to do. He can choose that research based on his values, but while he's performing the actions, it should be value neutral. There should not be any value attached in it. He should be very much neutral. He should be totally detached from it. And then his objective or his conclusion can also be value loaded. But his research should be value neutral. The means should be value neutral. So the concept of value neutrality was proposed by Max Weber, social research to overcome the personal bias while conducting any research. In the conducting of research, a person need to be a, like, he should not be putting his values in it, because if values are attached, then the objectivity will obviously be different. So the means to that particular objectivity should be value neutral. So over here you can see some examples also. Teacher and student example is there, and the doctor's example is there. Then a sociologist needs to keep him or herself away from manipulating the outcomes or findings of the social research, even if those results contradict with his own views and beliefs. Right? So value neutral, by being aware of his own values. How he can be value neutral? He first, if he knows that what are his values, है so, and beliefs. So if he knows that, then only he can be value neutral. He knows like I'll be attaching this value or this moral into this. So he will be trying to then only he will be trying to be value neutral, to understand how particular social research happens. And then, like, you can read this and then you will conclude it. Okay, like objectivity, like what is this? Ki, in order to reach objectivity, the presuppose are like the means to it is value neutrality. You need to be value neutral in order to reach the objectivity of a particular research. So yes, this is it. This was the discussion for the first test model answer. I hope you liked it, and any queries or any suggestions are quite welcome in this. So yes, thank you so much.